Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode for the duration of today's conference. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now, I'd like to turn the call over to your host, Linda, from the U.S. Census Bureau. Linda, you may begin.
Thank you, Anthony. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Linda Lee, and I would like to welcome everyone to the Exploring Census Data webinar series, where we present data available from the Census Bureau by topics. Other features include the use of real-life examples, so you can see some applications of the data. You'll also have the opportunity to ask our subject matter experts questions throughout and after the presentation using the Q&A feature. Now, this presentation is being recorded and will be posted on the Census Academy in a few weeks. So our topical series has been around for several years. On this slide, we have included two links for you. The first one is to learn more about the series. The second link is easy access to webinars that have been archived from previous years. Today, we will be looking at census data related to employment. You'll have the opportunity to learn about both private and public employment data available to help you with your research and make informed decisions. Now, with that being said, we have two speakers from different programs that will be showcasing their data and demonstrating how you can access the data. Up first is Mr. Ross Jacobson. Ross is a survey statistician with the Annual Survey of Public Employment and Payroll Program. Ross will be presenting on employment characteristics from the public sector of the economy. Then next is Ms. Erlene Dowell. Erlene is a supervisory program analyst with the Economic Management Division. Erlene will take you on a tour into employment data available from the Longitudinal Employer Household Dynamics Program, where she will showcase a vast amount of information available and how to access the data. Now, before we dive into today's session, please take note that we are utilizing technology off-site, and we aim to provide you with the best experience possible. Should we experience any technical delays during our session, please utilize the chat feature to let us know of issues, and we will mitigate them as soon as possible. On today's agenda, we will start off with a brief section about the Census Bureau. Then we will dive into the Census of Governments, the Annual Survey of Public Employment and Payroll, followed by the Longitudinal Employer Household Dynamics. And we'll also take a quick look at the Census Bureau's latest innovation, the Annual Integrated Economic Survey. And after the presentations, we will close out with a Q&A segment. The Census Bureau is the federal government's largest of the 13 statistical agencies, where we conduct over 130 surveys each year, with some of our well-known ones listed here. The first on the list, many people recognize the decennial census that is conducted every 10 years, counting the population and housing. Next is the American Community Survey, which is a yearly survey on the nation's population. Now, from the business data side of the house, we have the economic census that measures American businesses. And the economic census has a public sector's counterpart called the Census of Governments. This is the official 5-year measure of the nation's state and local government sector. When it comes to our data, a pyramid is a nice representation of the relationship between timeliness and details. At the top of the pyramid are high-frequency programs where data are released on a biweekly basis with less details available. Now, as you move down a level to our monthly and quarterly surveys, these are timely surveys that include the nation's key economic indicators used for tracking and reporting the GDP. Sliding down another level to the annual surveys, these are surveys that provide data for nearly every sector of the economy. Data from these programs are useful for analyzing trends. Then we have the economic census that takes place every 5 years. This is our most comprehensive data source for business data. Finally, at the base of the pyramid are administrative data that serves as the foundation for our statistics. Now, about the economic census. It is an online mandatory survey that is conducted every 5 years, and it is our most comprehensive source for business data. It covers 19 economic sectors that encompass 950 North American industry classification systems industries, spanning over 21,000 geographic areas. Responses are confidential, and it is an effort that is currently ongoing. Now, although the response deadline of March 15th has passed, we are currently doing non-response follow-ups. So there are opportunities to submit the survey. Also, an important thing to know is that estimates are acceptable. And this slide shows some basic information that is asked on the survey. Basic information such as employer ID number, physical location, primary business activity, and also questions related to revenue, employment, and industry-specific questions. It's important to note that most companies do not receive the economic census. The economic census only collects data from businesses with employees. So out of 30 million businesses in the United States, about 8 million of those have employees. And out of those 8 million, about 4 million businesses have received the invitation to respond. And we are here to reassure everyone that the invitation to respond is legitimate. The letter was mailed out earlier this year, and to the right of the slide is an image of the official letter. And we do have additional methods to verify the validity of the letter on census.gov. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not too late to respond. And about the data provided, the data is aggregated to create statistics. This protects the confidentiality of our respondents. The data is used as a statistical benchmark to other business programs, which makes economic analysis possible. The results are free and available online, with the first data release planned for early 2024. For those reasons, we want to let everyone know that your response makes a difference. And with that, I would like to turn it over to our first presenter, Mr. Ross Jacobson. All yours, Ross.
Thank you, Linda. Just going to pull up my slides real quick. So today I'm going to be talking about two data products: the Census of Government Survey of Public Employment and Payroll, and the Annual Survey of Public Employment and Payroll. Note that these data products are identical. The survey is the same. The only difference is the census includes all units. So for this reason, for most of this presentation, I'm basically going to be talking about them as if they are one survey. This survey captures employment and gross payroll by state and local governments. The survey has been conducted going back till 1957. Now, keep in mind that prior to 1980, the survey was not conducted annually. The survey offers comprehensive geographic coverage of the United States. The full census is conducted every 5 years on the years ending in 2 and 7, and the other years are annual survey years. The annual survey offers a very large sample size relative to other employment surveys, which is a strength of the survey. Another strength and big differentiator is the functional breakout that this survey provides, which I will be going into in more detail soon. There's also a wide variety of data users who use this survey information, including US Congress, federal agencies, research organizations, and many others. Now I'm going to talk a bit about the data collected and the publications that are offered. So the specific data variables directly collected are full-time employment, full-time payroll, part-time employment, and part-time payroll. Note this is gross payroll, and those are collected by state and function. There are also derived items which are disseminated, including full-time equivalent employees, total employment, and total payroll. There are several publications offered, some of the biggest of which there's a summary report which has high-level takeaways, narrative-driven high-level takeaways of the current year results, often compared to a prior year. Then there's also the more detailed state Excel file, local level Excel file, and state and local combined data files, which have the state level government and local level government data. Then there's, lastly, really importantly, is the individual unit files, which are another big value add of this survey. It has detailed unit level information. Now we're going to be looking at the functional breakdown that this survey provides in a little more detail. I'm going to be pointing out some of these functions, not all of them, but some of the ones that are just a bit interesting to point out. So one thing is firefighters and fire other. Note that those are two separate categories. Fire other are employees who work to support fire departments and firefighting capacities, but are not firefighters themselves. Similarly, for police protection officers and police protection other are two categories. The difference is police protection officers are those who have the power to arrest. Other are support staff at police departments, crime labs, the coroner's office, things like that. Another big part of our survey is education, which we will get more into later. Higher education instructional and higher education other are two separate categories, as well as elementary/secondary instructional and elementary/secondary other. There's also an other education category. Other government administration is an interesting one to point out. That includes government-wide agencies other than financial, judicial, and legal. It includes mayor or governor's offices, central planning, human resources, and other related government-wide activities. Health includes things you would expect, general health activities, but also includes things like regulation of air and water quality, animal control, and mosquito abatement. Moving along, here's some more functions. A few I'll mention are transit, which includes public mass transit systems, including subways, surface rails, and buses. Also, sea and inland port facilities is a particularly interesting one. This is focused on commercial ports, not recreational water facilities. And in fact, there are also some situations where there are ports that don't even involve the water, such as train transfer stations in certain situations. Natural resources, that consists of conservation, promotion, and development of natural resources, including irrigation, drainage, and soil conservation. And last one I'll mention on this slide is streets and highways. That is the maintenance, operation, repair, and construction of highways, streets, roads, sidewalks, bridges, and other related structures. And interestingly, it also includes snow and ice removal. Finally, some final functions. A few I'll mention are correction. In addition to corrections officers at prisons and jails, this also includes juvenile detention centers and parole boards. Public welfare includes things like administration of medical and cash assistance programs, nursing homes for populations in need, and veterans affairs. Other and unallocable is one I want to touch on. Note that is not a summation of all the remaining categories. It's its own distinct category. Contains anything that doesn't fit within the other functions. And there are some particular types of government employees that we see typically fall in this category, including general economic development, some types of code enforcement, and elections workers. Also, there are multifunctional employees who fit in other and unallocable. So for example, let's say we have a special district that focuses on water supply and sewerage. With that water supply and sewerage district, you're going to have some employees who would fit in the water supply function, some who will fit in the sewerage function. On the other hand, you're also going to have some employees who really are serving both needs. They're perhaps administrative support staff or financial support staff for both those functions. They would fit under other and unallocable. Now we're going to get into the data itself. So this is at a very broad level, looking at total government employment. The blue bars are local level governments, and the green bars are state level governments. This is in millions of employees, and this chart shows from 2002 to 2022, the trend over time. As you can see, the local level blue bars make up the majority of governments every year. You can also see at the total government employment level from 2002 to 2008, employment rose. Then it remained static to 2009, and then it began to decline from 2009 to 2013. It then began to increase steadily again up until 2020. It dipped sharply in 2021, partially rebounded in 2022. Next up, a similar type of chart, but this time for total government payroll. Again, blue is local level governments, green is state level, showing you the same time frame, and this is in billions of dollars of payroll. Again, the local level payroll makes up the majority in every year. From 2002 to 2009, payroll steadily increases. It then remains fairly static until 2012, and then steadily increases again up until 2020. It then remains static until 2021, and then increases again in 2022. Now let's take a look at still a high level, a national level. We're looking at the top 15 government functions for 2022. So now we're getting into specific functions. Again, blue is local, green is state. This is in millions of employees. And this chart really shows us where governments tend to focus their efforts and prioritize, where they prioritize their resources. And you can see education jumps way up to the top. And this is something we see similarly every year. Elementary and secondary education is the highest function by far, with local level making up almost all of that. Higher education is the second highest function overall, and that is more so state level governments. Next up is hospitals, which is a mix of local and state, followed by police protection, which is mostly local, then corrections, which is a mix of local and state. Some other interesting ones are fire protection, which is entirely local level, that only occurs at the local level. Also point out transit, which is a function that isn't as many employees and is something that governments don't tend to focus as many employees on and resources. Now, we're going to look at the employment change by function over time. The orange bars are going to be showing you the change in employment from 2020 to 2021. The purple bars will show the change of employment from 2021 to 2022. Keep in mind, these are just selected functions that are chosen for this chart, just based on what we thought were interesting to show. Parks and Recreation, we can see had a large dip from 2020 to 2021, and then a partial rebound from 2021 to 2022. Libraries similarly had a pretty big dip from 2020 to 2021, and then a partial rebound from 2021 to 2022. Same deal with higher education, elementary and secondary education. Air transportation is a bit different in that it declined from 2020 to 2021 and then remained fairly static from 2021 to 2022. Corrections declined both years. Health is interesting because it went up from 2020 to 2021 and then down a little bit from 2021 to 2022. Finally, Social Insurance Administration, this one went way up, almost 20% from 2020 to 2021, and then declined back a little bit from 2021 to 2022. Now, the next slide I'm about to flip to in a second is going to show you this exact same chart, but for Virginia instead of at the national level, just so we can get an idea of the state level by function information that this survey provides. All right, so here's the chart for Virginia, showing the same selected functions. We can see for Virginia that Parks and Recreation declined even more so than the national level, even more dramatically, and then went back up, partial rebound from 2021 to 2022. Libraries had a similar effect. Same with higher education and elementary and secondary. Air transportation is fairly similar to the national level, where it declined from 2020 to 2021, and then stayed fairly static from 2021 to 2022. Corrections, just like nationally, declined both years. Health is interesting, though, in that had the opposite effect of what we saw nationally. Health went down a little bit from 2020 to 2021, and then partially rebounded from 2021 to 2022. Social Insurance Administration is also interesting in that increased even more dramatically for Virginia, well over 30%. And then it very slightly declined from 2021 to 2022. So this gives you an idea of the detail level information that this survey can provide. Now, I am going to show you a bit about how to find ASPEP data on our website and what to look for. Just going to go and stop sharing for 1 second because I have to add on the other one, which didn't get selected, that has the screen that I want to share. So give me 1 second. Go ahead and share my screen now. Okay, so let's take a look at the website. We are looking at all right, so we are going to be looking at the ASPEP website, which I'll bring up here. 1 second to reload. All right, so you will find this on census.gov under the Our Surveys and Programs section. Keep in mind that this shows both the annual surveys and the Census of Governments surveys together, but for the website itself just calls it ASPEP, so that's where to find it. About ASPEP is an interesting section if you want more information on the survey. That is going to show you information about the survey, the contents, the frequency, how the data are used. You can also go to the FAQs and get frequently asked questions. That's over here. Go back to the main page. I'm going to get into some other stuff. So we also have the questionnaires. Second to load. So these questionnaires are by year, so they differ slightly. You can go here for the more to get different years if you want to see them. These questionnaires, note the survey is done online, but respondents have these worksheets available to assist them that lay out the specific questions that their type of government have, just in case it's helpful to them. We also have the letters and flyers here. So this is where you go if you want to see which questions, which type of government is asked, or respondent communications, which are the letters and flyers. Right. Let's go back to the main page. We also have the ASPEP data. So let's go here. Pull that up. So ASPEP data is where you're going to find the actual data on the survey. So you go in here, then you click on the datasets and tables link. And then you will see the different years here. And again, there's a more menu to go, and you can pick whatever year you want to see. For now, let's look at the 2022 Census of Governments. Show what we provide. So you go in here. This is going to provide the Excel files for publication that I mentioned, the state level government data, the local level data, and the state and local combined data. I'm going to show you a preview of the state level data in a second. You will also find the individual unit files here. Right. Now let's go take a look at a few other things before I show you that state level file. So if you go, first of all, note if you go all the way down at the bottom of the main page, you will find the summary briefs. So under publications, you will see Survey of Public and Payroll Summary Report, and that's going to have the high level narrative that I mentioned earlier, if you want that. Now over here on the main page, technical documentation, this is going to have some important info that you may be interested in, may answer a lot of your questions. So if you go here, you have all kinds of stuff. It's going to give you all kinds of info, including the methodology, which, by the way, the methodology, under that, you're also going to get response rates. So under that, you go in here, and you click methodology again if you want to get to it. Go down, it has the years because it differs a little by year. And there is, it's updated slightly, methodology and response rate for each year. Also, you can find the government classification manual in this technical documentation section. That's going to have the detailed information on what specifically classifies employees into which job function. So that can be very helpful and answer a lot of your questions there. And lastly, I'm now going to just quickly show you the state level data file for the 2022 Census of Governments. So this is March 2022 payroll that it's showing. So first it shows the US, so it's showing at a national level broken down by function. Each line's a different function at the national level. Then you've got different states, Alabama, Alaska, so on and so forth. It shows you the variables, the directly captured variables that I mentioned, full-time employment, full-time payroll, part-time employment, and part-time payroll. Then there's the derived variables, full-time equivalent employment, total full-time and part-time employment, and total payroll. Also, I mentioned a couple other interesting things here. First of all, note that it's the state level. So as I mentioned earlier on a previous chart, fire protection is only at the local level. So that's why it's 0 on this state level file. There are no fire protection, state level fire protection employees. Then also another interesting thing, the last thing I'll mention is that some of these, the totals in here on the functions are derived. So you have directly captured variables, functions such as police protection, persons with power of arrest, and police protection other. But then you have derived functions such as police protection total, fire protection total. Same deal with education. You have the directly captured elementary and secondary instructional, elementary and secondary other, higher education instructional, higher education other, and education other. But then you have the derived education total, elementary and secondary total, and higher education total, and so on and so forth. So with that, I am going to turn things over to Erlene.
Thanks, Ross. All righty. All right, well, as Linda mentioned earlier, my name is Erlene Dowell, and I've been promoting the Longitudinal Employer Household Dynamics, or LEHD program since 2010. When I first started, there were 2 data sets and 3 data tools. Now we have 5 data sets and 7 data tools, all focusing on workforce population. Unlike the American Community Survey and the Economic Census, LEHD is not dependent on survey responders. LEHD is a unique link between employer and employee data for the U.S. It is a voluntary federal-state partnership that was developed in the 1990s with just a few states. Under the partnership, states send us their administrative records, which are combined with censuses and surveys to create new dynamic information on how workers to produce public use data products as well as microdata for research. The LEHD infrastructure files provide a detailed and comprehensive picture of workers, employers, and their interaction in the U.S. economy. LEHD data is a quarterly database of linking employer and employee data covering over 97% of private employment and most state and local and federal jobs in the United States. Data availability is from 1990 through 2022. The start year varies by state. States send us their quarterly census of employment and wages, or their QCEW, which gives us firm data, and their unemployment insurance, or UI wage records, which gives us job data. And then the Office of Personnel Management gives us federal job data, and our person data comes from censuses and surveys. As I mentioned, we have 3 main data sets and 2 experimental data sets. Each data set has an application for easy access. Each data set, along with each data tool, is unique in its own way. If you are curious about employment, hires, separations, turnovers, and earnings, you would look at the Quarterly Workforce Indicators, or QWI, utilizing the QWI Explorer, the LED Extraction Tool, or Census API. If you want to look at employment for detailed and customized geography, you would look at the LEHD Origin Destination Employment Statistics or LOADS data using the On the Map or On the Map for Emergency Management data tools and coming later in the LED extraction tool. If you want to look at statistics on job mobility across state boundaries or industries, transitions between jobs by timing and firm or worker characteristics, or earning changes due to job changes, you would use our job-to-job or J2J flows data using the J2J Explorer and now in our LED extraction tool. One of our newer data sets is the Post-Secondary Employment Outcomes or PSEO. This reports earnings by institution, degree field, degree level, and graduation cohort for 1, 5, and 10 years after graduation and is accessible through the PSEO Explorer and Census API. The current release now includes data on 825 institutions, which covers more than 29% of all college graduates in the United States. PSEO is a data product generated by linking graduate transcript records to LEHD data on graduates of participating post-secondary institutions in the U.S. Finally, we have another experimental data set called the Veterans Employment Outcomes, or VEO. This experimental data set reports earnings and employment outcomes for U.S. Army veterans 1, 5, and 10 years after discharge by military occupation, rank, demographics, industry, and geography of employment. This is accessible through our VEO Explorer. In addition to the data tools, raw data downloads are available, along with LEHD microdata for approved projects through our secure census research data centers. Data on private sector employment provides comprehensive, regularly collected source of information on selected economic and demographic characteristics for businesses and business owners by gender, ethnicity, race, and veteran status. Data on public sector employment and payroll measure the number of federal, state, and local civilian government employees. In the world of LEHD, we have all jobs, primary jobs, all private jobs, and private primary jobs. All jobs includes both private and public sector. It also includes if a worker has a full-time and part-time job. Primary jobs are both primary and private sector jobs, but primary is what brings home the most income. And all private and private primary are the same as all primary and primary, except they only include the private sector. First, let's look at the QWI Explorer. In this screenshot, we are looking at California employment and the 4-digit NAICS code for public administration for quarters from 2018 to 2022 quarter 4. Let's go live to see how easy it is to recreate this example. I'd like to mention that I chose California because this enabled us to go all the way down to the 4-digit. We do have national data, but I decided the national data can only go to the 2 digits instead of the 4-digit. So let's go live so you can see how easy this is. So currently I'm at the LEHD homepage, which is lehd.ces.census.gov. And the easiest way to get to the applications is here on the left-hand side under the word applications. So I'll go ahead and go down to the second to the last QWI Explorer and click on that. And once I'm there, it automatically has California because I've been doing a little research since then. But we have the indicator, which tells us what the count is. And then you can change the indicators to different things such as employment change, all the way down to earnings as well. And then I am going to go ahead and click on firm ownership because I want to look at the public sector as well. So I'll click on all private ownership and I'll click on all ownership and then click on OK. And once I do that, I'm going to change the group So here, I'll click on this. I saw a question in the Q&A about age, and you can look at age in the QWI. If I click on that, these are the age groups that you can look at. So we're going to cover something like that in the J2J. But right now in the group, I'm going to change this to the 4-digit NAICS code. And then once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and click on the blue text underneath the group box. And instead of looking at all of the industries, I'm going to check none. I'm going to uncheck all NAICS. And then you can either scroll down or you can type in 92. And 92 has all of the public administration. So I'll go ahead and click anything from here on down. And then I'm going to click OK. So just to mention, our data tools are very intuitive. If you're going to click on buttons, there's going to be another button that is almost saying like next. Anything that's highlighted in blue or underlined or bold tells you you can go ahead and interact with that number. So here, we're looking at 2018 Q1 all the way to 2022 Q4, and you can see all of the different public administration sectors. And one of the cool things is if I normalize the x-axis, you can really get an idea, and you can see national security started out in 2018, was pretty the same as everybody else, but then had a big spike in 2021 Q1 all the way to 2022. You can also change it up. Oh, and just to mention, there's no space in research technology, and we have the reasons why here under the QWI status flags, which is aggregate of cells not released because component cells do not meet US Census Bureau publication standards. So the other point that I wanted to show in the QWI is that the earnings. So the earnings are also very interesting. And as you can see, the highest one right now is space research and technology, and it goes all the way up, but we can see over the years how this is monthly earnings. So we can see it started at 7,656. And now in 2022, Q3, they are earning 9,451. So just really fascinating stuff. Great to explore through that. All right, moving on. So now we're going to talk about job-to-job flows, and this is the job-to-job flows Explorer, and we're looking at older workers. So the first screenshot is a map of the states where workers are leaving public administration. California being the darkest, most likely due to the population. The screenshot to the right, we are looking at the top 9 states of older workers, which are 55 to 64 and 65 to 99 leaving public administration. So currently J2J's lowest geography, just to let you know, is metropolitan, and the lowest NAICS code is the 2-digit. So we'll go again into this, and I'll just go back to the LEHD tab and then click on J2J Explorer, which is at the top. And as you can see, this kind of walks you through everything. So we can see hires to, and we can change this to national. And then we're going to look at public administration. And then under the number 2 box, what's highlighted in blue is your opportunity to click on any of these 3 choices. And then we also give you other choices down at the bottom if you want to look at are hires to jobs in public administration coming from non-employment or another job. And these are other suggestions that you might want to look at. But we're going to go ahead and click on which states, because I just want to recreate the slide. And again, you can see if I hover over California, and we're looking at 2022 Q2, and this is 18,064. So the red states, just to let you know, again, we're just putting data into these states right now, so they're not ready. And then the grayed out states no longer participate with LEHD, but hopefully in the near future they might. So I want to show you a couple tips regarding this. So if I click on this table and I'm going to double click on all, it starts to descend the states. So you can see what the top 9 states are. And I went ahead and made this already for us because I knew going in to look for those states was going to be a little difficult. So once I do that, I'm going to change the columns to age. And then I'm going to unclick that. And I don't want to look at all of them. I just want to look at the older workers. And then my favorite icon on this whole data tool is the bipartite chart, because it totally gives you a great visual of what's happening. So if I go ahead and click on this percentage, just because percentages are easier to look at rather than numbers, you can hover over California and you can see the age breakdown. So you can see about 68.4% are 55 to 94, while 31.5 are 65 to 99. And then we'll just go down to the bottom one, which is Washington. And then you can see, again, 78.3% of Washington state are in administration. And then 65 to 69, 65 to 99. And then Florida being the next largest state. And then you can change things up. Maybe you want to see, those that are leading, but due for time limits, we're not going to be able to do stuff like that. Okay, so moving on is our On the Map. On the Map is a robust data tool that allows users to analyze workforce characteristics all the way down to a census block. The tool allows analysts to look at workforce composition by industry and demographic characteristics, along with worker inflow and outflow and commuting patterns. This is the only data set within the LEHD suite of data tools that includes federal employees. So let's first talk about the inclusion and exclusion. The list on the left is what is covered in On the Map, which includes executive branches, legislative branches, and the U.S. tax court, to name a few. On the right-hand side is what's excluded. So we do not include information regarding the FBI, the DEA, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Secret Service, Treasury Department, nor do we have anything about the military. So looking at this screenshot, we are looking at the largest location of federal employees. So we're looking at Washington, D.C., and on the left side, we have the total primary workers. And on the right side, we have the total private workers. So to get the federal workers, you actually have to subtract the primary from the private. So if you take those two numbers that I have down at the bottom, the total numbers, you would get what equals to be the federal employees. So let's go live just to look at this. Again, I'm back at the LEHD tab, going to the On the Map. And then I'm going to go ahead and type in Washington, D.C. As you can see in my queue, I've done this before down here. So if you're looking at different geographies, it kind of keeps it in the queue. So in case you want to go back and look at it. So I'll go ahead and click on Washington, D.C. city. And once that happens, you have a pop-up that tells you what the square miles are, well, how many census blocks are in that selected area. And then there's this bold blue underlined words that say perform analysis on selection area. So once I do that, it comes to an analysis setting. So in the first column, we can look at where the worker works or where the worker lives. In the second column, we have all the different types of analyses that it has. So we can look at the area profile and the area comparison. So the area profile is an overview. It just kind of gives you a lot of details about that selected area. The area comparison is that you can compare ages, you can compare earnings, you can compare race, ethnicity, educational attainment, industries, and so on, and geography, by the way. And then distance direction tells you where people are traveling from and how many miles they're traveling from to go to the selected area. Then destination tells you what cities, what counties, what states, whatever you want, you can choose here, but it tells you where they're coming from. And then the inflow outflow tells you how many people are traveling into the area to work, how many people live and work within the area, and how many people travel out of the area to work. The next column is the year. You have from 2020 all the way down to 2002. You can choose all of them if you want, or you can compare 2020 to 2019 after COVID or during COVID, before COVID. And then you can compare 2020 to 2010 or just do different things such as that. And then here's the job types that we talked about earlier, the all jobs, the primary jobs, the all private, and the private primary. So we'll keep it at the private primary jobs first, and then I'll just show you how that goes. And then here's the go with the exclamation point and the lightning bolt. So I'll go ahead and click on that. Before I go, if you forgot everything I just said, there are question marks throughout the applications that you can hover over, and it kind of gives you a brief description of what you're looking at. So I'll go ahead and click go. And then now we're looking at the private jobs. So we can see there's about 462,575. And then it also, like I said, gives you worker age, earnings, the NAICS industry. And as you can see, it doesn't have public administration because this is the private, but it gives you the race, ethnicity, educational attainment, and sex. But we can go in there and change the setting and change it to primary jobs. And then you can see how the numbers change and how the numbers go up. So now we're looking at 614,671, which is including the federal jobs as well. So this gives you the breakdown. And if I scroll down to public administration, it shows 123,418. So those are the ones that are included, not things like the FBI and so forth. And I wanted to show you one more thing before I leave this place, because it's like one of the real wow factors that we have for on the map. So if I click on inflow outflow, and if anybody's ever been in DC when we were all going to work, you can imagine what the traffic would be like. Houston is a good one to do too, but you can see that 431,330 people are on that road trying to get into DC, while 183,341 live and work there. And then 94,355 live in DC, but they are traveling out to work. But look at that number, 431,000. That's a big number. Right, back to the PowerPoint. So you can't talk about on the map without talking about its sister map, on the map for emergency management. So on the map for emergency management is also a web-based data tool with an interface for accessing U.S. population and workforce statistics in real time for areas being affected by natural disasters. So this is the one area where we actually have population. So within the LEHD suite of tools, this is the only area that we have population. So we cover natural events that are happening. So the tool allows users to retrieve reports containing detailed workforce, population, and housing characteristics for hurricanes, floods, wildfires, winter storms from the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. And then we have federal disaster declaration areas from FEMA. We have wildfires from the Department of Interior and Department of Agriculture. And then our demographic and economic data comes from Census Bureau's 2020 decennial, the 2017-2021 American Community Survey, and the 2020 loads data. So here's a screenshot from GR 4480, which is New York during COVID-19, looking at workers employed in the area, particularly in the public administration sector. So let's go live to recreate this example. And I'm going to have to be very quick on this, but I just wanted to show you how this map works and that it's live right now. It has all of the events that are happening. You can see that the little wind swaths here, like this is Hurricane Lee going this way. And then when there is something going on, you can actually track the hurricanes. You can see the red flames, you can see the floating houses, and then all the orange areas are disaster declaration areas. So I'm just gonna type in DR-4480, and then COVID-19 comes up, and then it zooms into New York. And then I would just change the topic and I would put in event workforce employed in the event area, and then we can see educational attainment, and then NAICS industry sector, and we can see public administration, about 534,857 in the state of New York. You can actually break it down. You can change the event area to counties and places if you wanted to. All right. And then I'm just going to talk about these real quick. So this is the Veterans Employment Outcomes, or VEO. It's also a new experimental U.S. Census Bureau statistics on labor market outcomes for recently discharged enlisted Army veterans. Even though we do not have work data on the military, we have data after they leave the military. These statistics are tabulated by military specialization, service characteristics, employer industry, and veteran demographics. They are generated by matching service member information with a national database of jobs using the state-of-the-art confidentiality protection mechanisms to protect the underlying data. The VEO are made possible through data sharing partnerships with the U.S. Army, state labor market information offices, and the U.S. Census Bureau. VEO data are currently available at the state and national level. So in this screenshot, we are looking at the number of former Army soldiers employed 1 and 5 and 10 years after discharge of all occupations, infantry, and unnamed vehicle system operators, or drones. So we can see what the numbers are. So you can see those with the unnamed vehicles. There's not very many. If I had time, I would go into the application and show you what their earnings are, because since there's not very many, their earnings are very high as expected. Okay, and finally, the post-secondary employment outcomes. This one we have, we can see right now that even though we don't know what the public sector looks like, it has potential employment in public administration and their earnings. So here we can see public administration 1 and 5 years after graduation earnings compared to all instructional programs and business management, marketing, and related services. And in summary, these are the web-based analysis and visualization tools provided, accessibility to the data for a wide variety of user needs and levels of statistical expertise. We also have links to our LED webinar series, which is coming up next week on Wednesday. And then we have the data gems, where it actually walks you through how to use on the map. So with that, I'm going to toss it back to Linda.
Thank you, Erlene. Let me share my screen. Okay. There we go. All right. So thank you, Erlene. Before we begin the Q&A, I wanted to promote the latest re-engineering and modernizing effort at the Census Bureau. So beginning in the spring of 2024, we're launching the annual Integrated Economic Survey, also referred to as the AIES. The AIES integrates 7 existing surveys that are listed on this slide. This is especially important for anyone that may be currently using data from one or several of these programs, so you'll know where to go for the data beginning next year. Now, so what's collected in the AIES? The survey includes current questions from the 7 existing annual surveys. You'll be able to get a wide range of data that includes the ones listed here and more. Data will also be available across industries and by geographic location. So data collection begins this fall, and by winter, the 7 surveys will begin transitioning to the AIES, and the official launch will be the spring of next year. So if you're interested in learning more information, please use the contact information included here to contact us. And with that, I want to thank everyone for your interest and time in attending today's webinar. Thank you, Ross and Erlene, for presenting our audience with a wide range of data that we have from the Census Bureau and how the information can be helpful when learning and gathering data about employment. Today, we featured 2 surveys related to employment that can help you make business decisions. This is really only the tip of the iceberg. We have a variety of programs that can help you in numerous ways. We also have data products such as stories and infographics that can help you see our data in action. On census.gov, we have many resources for you to explore, so I highly encourage you to visit our site, census.gov, to explore the possibilities. Also, please take note that we have contact information for our data dissemination specialists, and this is for anyone that may be interested in a hands-on in-person training. We have this service provided to you for free. And as a reminder, we're focusing on our Q&A on today's topic, and we will be accepting questions related to today's topic. So if you have any other questions on other topics, please send us a question to census.askdata@census.gov. To ask your question now, please submit your question and we will channel it to the appropriate area. So one moment, I'm going to unshare my screen because I cannot see the questions. So, all right. Give me 1 second. So Erlene, there is a question here on, is it a possibility that we can get the quarterly workforce indicator per regions at the state level, like the census block for counties in the ACS?
So we can do state level. I think I answered it a little bit, but there's no census blocks in the QWI, but it is available on the map. So you can email me. I have my email in the slides, but you can email me and we can chat about that if you'd like.
Thank you. There's another question for you, Arlene. Are there any functions that would show job growth by industry and geography?
Yes, yes, there is. I mean, like most of our data tools can do that. So beginning in the QWI, it's automatic because we have the quarters that you can look at, so you can see all the different industries that have grown since COVID or before COVID. We look at manufacturing all the time, so yes, the QWI is probably one of the better ones to look at, but as I mentioned on the map, you can look at the geography. And for example, if you're looking at something like somebody's building a stadium, and you can wonder whether the stadium has growth because they built this new stadium there. So you can look at the jobs that might be because of the stadium or might not be because of the stadium. And you can look at how many workers live in that area as well. So yes, a lot of our data tools, you can look at things like that.
Thank you for that. And we have another question. The VEO is only for Army veterans. Are there any plans on adding other branches?
Yep, there is plans. So I think what's coming up is probably Marines first, maybe. But yes, we are talking to the Department of Defense and getting that data included in the VEO.
Thank you. Another question on the API. Is there an API for LEHD or is all data export to spreadsheet only?
So QWI has the Census API, and so does the PSEO, but the rest do not have Census API. But we do have raw data downloads, and then that LED extraction tool, if you go and look at that, that makes it easier for you to work with the raw data and be able to manipulate it.
Thank you. And there's another question. Someone is interested in knowing which employers in Florida in the restaurant field have increased their pay since the pandemic. Is that something that would be possible using the tool?
So you can look at specifically the QWI Explorer. You can look at the industry, but you cannot look at the employer.
Thank you. And in the interest of time, we're going to take one more question, and this is from someone who was interested in having you show something between slide 28 and 34 regarding traveling from, let me find the exact, employers traveling from DC, inflow analysis. Individuals traveling into DC, for example, and outside related to work.
All right, so we're looking at DC again, the same one.
Yep.
So here's the inflow again, 431,330. But since we've already seen that, I'll just do this quick little thing here. And I'm clicking on destination. And the selected area is still Washington, D.C. But now on the right, you can see the tables of how many people are traveling from these different cities to work in Washington. And then, you know, this is my favorite feature on this data tool is the spoke overlay. So right now we're looking at the top 10 cities, and you can see where they're coming from. You're getting a visual. You see Bowie out there, Silver Spring, and so on. You can do this in your area. You don't have to just do DC. And then you can click on this identify key, click on a spoke. So I'm clicking on Alexandria, the tip of it, and then it tells us how many workers are are coming from Alexandria to work in DC, what their ages are, their earnings, and the industry segments that they work in. Is that good?
Thank you. Thank you, Arlene. I want to thank everyone for your time and interest in today's webinar. And now I would like to turn it back over to our facilitator, Anthony. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for listening to today's session. You may disconnect at this time. Have a great afternoon.